Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Tuesday night's debate. President Trump detailed Kamala Harris's cultural Marxism, including making all things that are true, making mention of many things, including now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. And this was fact-checked by the fact-checkers. Time magazine. The former president falsely claimed Harris wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. Who fact checks the fact checkers?
There's audio of her saying that.
Correction issued yesterday. The original version of the story mischaracterized as false Donald Trump's statement. As a presidential candidate in 2019, Harris filled out a questionnaire saying she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition treatment for detained immigrants. Yeah, no kidding. But it's funny in a sense because it sounds so ridiculous that the fact checkers didn't even bother to fact check it. They just assumed Trump was making it up. Oh, now he's using hyperbole to try to highlight that she's extreme. No, he's actually just reciting her real positions and her actual conduct over her time in various public offices. In point of fact, this was something that she was on the forefront of and very proud of when she was making her way up the political ladder.
They were standing in the way of surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. And there was a specific case. And when I learned about the case, I worked behind the scenes to not only make sure that that transgender woman got the services she was deserving. So it wasn't only about that case. I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need. And I believe it was not only, I know it was historic in California, but I believe actually it may have been one of the first, if not the first in the country, where I pushed for that policy in a Department of Corrections.
She was at tip of the spear at the state level. She gets up to the federal level. Now you just expand it to people in this country illegally too, because why not? Mm-hmm.
You hear that, fact checkers?
For more on this and other related matters, please be joined by Noelle Mering. She's a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, where she co-directs the Theology of Home project. She's the editor for Theology of Home and co-author of the series, and the author of the new book, Awake, Not Woke, A Christian Response to the Cult of Progressive Ideology. And Noelle will be speaking at Willows Academy there in Des Plaines next week, September 20th at 6 p.m. Again, she'll be at Willows Academy September 20th at 6 p.m. If you want to hear what she has to say, you can do so locally in Des Plaines, Willows Academy in Des Plaines. Noelle Mering, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
The cult of gender identity and the ghoulishness that is associated with it, particularly with respect to children, there's pushback in sports, and there's some pushback at the K through 12 level, some litigation, but it really feels like sensible people that don't want to mutilate their children are losing this battle at the federal level, certainly with this administration, and at many state and local levels as well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things happening. I think on the grassroots level, the anti-gender ideology movement, of which I am a part, has had a lot of successes. I think that popular opinion is really repelled against this for good reason. And we've seen clinics shut down, particularly in England, and some lawsuits beginning. But from the top-down level, they're really aggressive. And I think because they know that this is not something that sells well or sells easily. And so it's a constant series of manipulations, denying reality, that what we saw at the debate with Kamala saying that she never said something that she clearly said, and then sort of coercive laws and top-down efforts to really force this ideology, not only in policy, but in our schools, as you said, in the imaginations of children. It makes you wonder, why is this so important? I think it's verifiable why it's so important. deeply destabilizing to the human person, and therefore to our ability to form relationships, to be fruitful. It's sterilizing children at young ages, and also for us to live in a civil society that has some sort of rational mode of being. It's deeply transgressive, and in that transgression, it is considered their liberation. This is a real stance against nature, against God, and against moral law.
And the various churches around the country, they don't seem to be meeting the moment either. I'm going to give you an example. They're myriad, but the Pacific School of Religion is hosting a series of workshops this fall. The Queering the 2024 Vote workshops are a project of the Protestant Seminary's Center for LGBTQ and Gender Studies in Religion. Online series will focus on the question during the current election season: how might we, as LGBTQ people, communities, and allies, be voices and votes of positive change for a nation in such desperate need of justice, hope, love, and compassion? Vote with Love, I should say, workshop headed by Reverend Michael Newroth, the director of the United Church of Christ Office of Public Policy and Advocacy. Elections are a queer thing. A sacred response. Another workshop will incorporate different rituals, meditations, and reflection exercises to help LGBTQ individuals reflect on the election season. This is the new mantra of much of Christian thought in this country.
Yeah, I think that the guise of compassion is always going to be the first battle cry of the movement, because it is confusing, I think, for a lot of Christians, because, compassion and love is at the very heart of our faith. But, they're taking a Christian concept and manipulating it to really support something that doesn't make us ennobled or empowered. It makes us really slaves. But under the guise of becoming like a deity ourselves, it's sort of a self-deification. We can transform our very identity and make ourselves a god in a way by saying that we are even transcendent against our bodily reality. But it's really sad. And, I think the fact that there are so many shepherds kind of playing alongside of this, pastors and such, a lot of people, I think a lot of Christians will try to translate this movement into a way that makes it seem like really is compassionate. And I think that they're doing that out of some misguided sense of Christian charity. But I think we owe that sort of charity to maybe an individual. Maybe we can assume that this person's confused and just deluded. But we don't owe that sort of charity towards a movement and an ideology. And if we look at the queer theory, the literature, there's really no way to reconcile it with Christianity. And so, whether there's malevolence or just ignorance, this has to be opposed because it's actually hurting and damaging people, and particularly children. There really is no way to reconcile it.
Well, I mean, Pope Benedict, famously said that, paraphrasing, that basically the devil doesn't show up as evil; he shows up as a false good, and that's right. That's what this seems to be. But how do you? I mean, what's your sort of approach or thinking about how you convey to people the what they think is good is in fact a false good?
I think one of the most powerful ways of combating this is to elevate the stories and testimonies of the de-transitioners. They really have a powerful witness against gender ideology because they bear in their very bodies and in their life that they had the full embrace of it, that they, utterly, deeply believed this at one point, and to the point of allowing their bodies to be mutilated and taking drugs and hormone pills. And then they also bear the scars and the real pain of the movement. And the regret, and the lifelong permanent changes that they've experienced. And, oftentimes they have lifelong chronic illnesses. Their lives are shortened. They'll never have children in many cases. These are deeply powerful testimonies. And I think elevating their stories and giving them a platform is really important. It's also the reason why they are so silenced. The movement really hates them.
Yeah. How has social media played a part in all of this?
Well, good and for ill. There's been a lot of teenagers who have been pulled into gender ideology through ideologues on social media, really targeting them and telling them, you're going to be so important. This is going to make you really special, and elevate your voice. If you start by social transitioning, change your pronouns. Now you maybe take hormones. And a lot of them, who regret this later will testify that, this really made me feel like it took my pain away. I had all this emotional pain, maybe some insecurities, and this made me feel important and powerful and like I was unassailable. But social media can also have a contrary effect in battling this, because a lot of, the detransitioner stories are allowed on, for example, X and things like this. That would not be ever, if we were limited to the 3 main networks or something, we wouldn't be hearing these stories. And so I think there's been a powerful effect on both sides.
You want to, as you said, be respectful and compassionate on an individual basis with somebody who's struggling. But when it comes to parents of minor children and those parents who basically just turn the reins over to the kids and they do whatever the kid thinks he or she wants, like mutilating themselves. I mean, is there any place for condemnation and shame for the parents? Is there any, in terms of this being a social contagion you were just sort of describing, and there's certainly a facet of it. What about singling out parents who make these ghastly decisions? And the road to hell being paved with good intentions. I really don't care what their intentions are. I mean, I know there's always a reticence to get in the business of condemnation. We're all sinners. We're all hypocrites. I get it. But again, that the parent of a minor child, just that specific cohort. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, they're entrusted with the lives of their child, and it's really horrifying what these parents are doing. I mean, I think of it akin to Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where your caregiver, most oftentimes a mother, invents or exaggerates illnesses in her child to get them care, and it winds up making them even sicker. And, you get the sense that it's almost for the sake of the mother having adulation and being the victim and being posturing as this person who deeply cares about the child. But it really is sort of about her, and I think that there's some things very similar happening with these parents. And, oftentimes they're maybe deluded, and, part of the horror is that doctors and experts in their lives are telling them your kid might commit suicide if they don't get this care. And so, there's some sympathy to be had for the parents who are just terrified of that prospect. So I think that there's probably various degrees of culpability that these parents are experiencing, but certainly, there needs to be almost someone, a voice just saying, this is deeply harming your child. You are the father. You are the mother. This is not your role to accompany them into something that is to their demise. So, yeah, I think that there needs to be some straight and solid and candid conversations to be had, and not sort of thinking of the parent as purely a victim. The child is the victim. The parent is responsible.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I would include the medical professionals in this business too, holding out those adults for opprobrium in the same way that are participating, again, specifically with minor children. Noelle Mering is a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, where she co-directs the Theology of Home project. She's an editor for Theology of Home and the co-author of the Theology of Home book series. She's also the author of the new book, Awake Not Woke, A Christian Response to the Cult of Progressive Ideology, and that will certainly be the topic in her keynote speech at Willows Academy event on September 20th, 6 o'clock. Willows Academy, September 20th, 6 o'clock. Willows Academy in Des Plaines for those interested in attending. Noelle, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
As a business owner, do you have a strategy for exiting your business? Most business owners don't. Studies done by the Exit Planning Institute show 75% of business owners who don't have an exit plan are